What if I told you that the private side of banking isn't hidden in a vault? It's hidden in plain sight and you've already been using it without realizing it. In this video, I'll break down what the private side of banking really means, how it connects to everything I teach about trust, debt instruments, administrative remedy, and why people are asking the wrong question when it comes to private banking. I've spent years studying the financial system, the UCC, trust, administrative law, and I'm here to connect the dots so that you can finally move like the bank. Now, before we dive into this video, this is not legal advice, this is not financial advice. Make sure to do your due diligence after the video. Make sure to stay tapped in with the community and watch these videos on a consistent basis so that you can get confident with the information. Number two, if you're brand new, remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tap in to the community, turn on those post notifications so that you get an update every time I post a video, okay? Now, what we're gonna be talking about today specifically is going to be about private banking, okay? And what it actually means. I feel like a lot of people talk about private banking and they look at it as more as something that is like a, something hidden, right? But the reality is everything that I've been teaching on this channel is literally private banking, okay? So not only we're gonna talk about what private banking means, we're gonna talk about what the private side is about, the roles, why the system trains you to stay public, and what I've been talking about this entire time, has literally been that. I just never named it private banking. So let's go ahead and dive into the truth behind private banking. Remember, while I'm making this video, this is not legal advice, it's not financial advice. Tap into the Twitch if you want to be able to drop in some questions and answers. We are live streaming while this YouTube video is being created. But this is about to be a good talk, all right? So here's what people think about private banking, all right? Most people picture some hidden elite institution with a secret account when it comes to private banking. They believe that private banking equals to like some offshore account, Swiss vaults or secret banking licenses, but the reality is that it's not even that. It's more of the things that you do behind the scenes when it comes to banking. That's what private banking actually is. So a lot of people ask the wrong question and say, well, how do I start a private bank? But what they really means is, how do I get out of the system? They really mean is, how do I operate above the courts? What they really mean is, how do I issue instead of borrow? You guys gathering that, okay? It's very different from the aspect of, thinking that private banking is where you're gonna have this secret bank account and you're gonna be able to have like, unlimited money or whatever the case may be. Or when they think of moving privately, is about paperwork as far as like inherently like being private in a sense. Like some people still want to operate like, like we do, get credit, maneuver, work a job and all of that, but they, want to do it under the scenes so people, can't, track it. But you can do that physically, right? Like you can literally like, stop writing your names on public documents. Yes, you can go through this, secure party in private and all of that and create a trust and all of that. But if you're not using it and you're still moving on the public side, then you're technically still public. It's the actions that you do privately that makes private banking what it is, okay? So they're not wrong, but they're just asking the wrong version of the question, okay? Yes, you can create an offshore account, a private bank account. Yes, you can have your mattress and put money under it and it can inherently be private. That's a private bank. It's not something like extravagant or mystical that you think. Private banking is the process in the communication with the bank privately versus publicly, okay? So when you think of the private side of banking, it's really about roles, okay? So the first role, when you think of private, equals more contractual and not statutory, okay? So everything private is literally in the contract. I mean, it's not like you're openly like showing people your contracts, right? It's private. But then we dive into the public. The public equals something that is regulated and permission based. So even the shift of conversation in your letters will determine whether it's private or public, right? If you're moving from a space of where you know who you are and you're speaking about the contract as a equal party, then it's not like you're going to be going in there asking for permission. Can I do this? Can I do that? No, we had an agreement, a mutual agreement, and this is what I decided I'm going to do about this contract, or this is how I'm going to perform. And we've discussed this. Okay. But what private banking means is controlling assets through a trust. That is something that's private. Okay. Yes, you got the trust part, right? But now put your assets in the trust and control it. Number two, issuing your own instruments. So when we talk about negotiable instruments under UCC 3-104, it talks about the unconditional offer to pay a fixed amount of money over a period of time. An unconditional offer to pay money or to perform is an action versus a noun. Okay. So I make sure I don't butcher it. Okay. Yes, it's an unconditional promise or order to pay a fixed amount of money. Okay. The action is not, or the noun that people think when it comes to negotiable instrument, or when they think of the dollar sign or the dollar, right? They're thinking of that physical versus an action, right? Or instead of thinking of a negotiable instrument being the dollar, think of a negotiable instrument being a promise or order with to pay a fixed amount of money attached to it. You know what I mean? It's the promise or order, and none of that is really physical other than the act of making that unconditional promise, whether it's in written form. Now, if you create an unconditional promise, like if you say, hey, I conditionally will promise to pay $50 a month for the next 12 months, you have just created a negotiable instrument that the bank uses as a financial asset. Okay? So that's what issuing your own instrument is. You creating your own promise to pay. Number two, reserving your rights under UCC 1-308. Under UCC 1-308, that's without prejudice. That is all rights reserved. Essentially, it's saying I don't waive my rights as it pertains to this contract. Yes, I will sign this, but I'm reserving my rights. I want to keep all of my rights. If in some way, shape, or form, there is something that I missed in this contract, I still want the ability to assert my rights. Okay? Also, private banking means acting as the fiduciary instead of the debtor. Okay? The debtor is the person that essentially owes the debt. The fiduciary is the person who would manage the debt. You know, it's very different. Okay? And then enforcing remedy via the administrative process, not litigation. Not to say not to do litigation, but the administrative process is something that you do privately. You enforce your remedy privately, and then if it doesn't work privately, then you go public with your private administration through litigation. Okay? But then again, you're not really operating privately. So it's a little shaky, but it's really the private process that you're doing. If the world was perfect, then you won't have to go to court most times, but it's not. Okay? Now, so if you think about it, if you ever use the 1099A, you challenged jurisdiction, or even moved as a trustee, you've already touched the private side. If you did anything that I'm talking about or talked about on this YouTube channel, you have already moved privately. You're already doing private banking. You see, I talk about it in the aspect of talking about debt discharge, but debt discharge is just something that you can do, is an action that is of private banking. You are communicating privately with a bank or settling a contract with another company. Okay? That is private banking. All right? So the system trains you to stay public. So to do things like the schools will teach you obedience and not really equity. When you think of obeying, you think of, mindlessly, or I'll just say, just doing what people tell you to do. And equity, I think of equity as, equality, okay? When it comes to the bank typically tells you what to do, and you just trust and believe them. Same thing with the government. But what if you started to treat the government like as if you were your own government, communicating with another government? Yes, they may be bigger, but you're still a government. But then also at the same time, same thing with these banks. You communicating with the bank, not as a bank, but you treat them business to business. That's equity. Equity, think of fairness. But then you can also think of equity as value too. Okay, you have equity on your house, then that's the value, the cost, however much it is, minus the original value, that's the equity. Okay? So if this is a $300,000 home and it goes up to $50,000, the $50,000 is considered equity. Okay? But they don't teach you this. Okay? They'll just, they won't teach you this. It's not even a question. Fear, confusion, and language keeps you stuck as a consumer. I learned something today, where even when particularly talking about the Constitution, okay? The Constitution is written in parables, not because it's written in parables to confuse the people who are easily confused, to people who are not truly trying to find the information. Okay, so you may see things like a negotiable instrument means an unconditional promise or order to pay a fixed amount of money, and people would just see the money part who inherently don't just want to affirm that you have to pay money, right? But not knowing that the promise or order is what's underlined, and to pay a fixed amount of money is not money, if that makes sense. All right. But when you look at the information, the Constitution, the UCC, USC, from an eye that's genuinely trying to, learn about it and think from the private side, you're not going to read it. You're going to actually find negotiable instrument versus a person who would just look up the definition of legal tender. Legal tender, that is under the 315103. Okay. Someone who just looking up legal tender would just look this up, and they'll read United States coins or currencies, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of the Federal Reserve Bank and national banks, are legal tender for all debts, public charges, taxes, and dues. Foreign gold and silver coins are not legal tender for all debts. This is what someone will read and say, well, legal tender for all debts is Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of the Federal Reserve Bank. That's the only way. When they are asking for legal tender, that's what they're asking for. But the reality is that the person who is not the person who is genuinely trying to find the information and is actually moving on a private side will read this as, okay, it doesn't say that a negotiable instrument isn't considered legal tender. Okay, if anything, this negotiable instrument has more value than this legal tender. Okay, or it's the same. But it doesn't say it's not that. It will clearly say that foreign gold and silver are not legal tender for all debts, but it doesn't say unconditional offer is not legal tender. Why wouldn't it say that? And this is what people don't read into or think about. Because yes, you can read this and you can read it for face value, but you have to truly think about it. Okay? So, versus using Federal Reserve notes and things of that nature, an easy way to, and this is also still in essence private, okay? But what's truly private is if you do negotiable instruments instead of using your dollar bills, okay? And also at the same time, the system trains you to stay public by having attorneys only touch, public things, only litigate, okay? And they don't want to have anything to do with private remedy because it goes against, it's unfamiliar, okay? It's not illegal, it's unfamiliar, okay? So when you think about it, you are, I want you to understand that when it comes to private banking, either you've been doing it all wrong or you just haven't been thinking about it the right way, okay? When it comes to, private banking, another thing I want to bring up is when I talk about trusts, fiduciary roles, EC filings, negotiable instruments, coupon remittance, 1099A's, C's, or Form 56, discharging debt through an administrative process, using your signature as credit, I'm literally teaching you how to operate on the private side, okay? And the public side, which is regulated, licensed, and visible, includes banks, consumer credit, court-ordered debt. The private side is more contractual, trust-based, remedy-driven, and rooted in equity and commercial law, not something that they would just inherently teach you in school. So when you guys are asking, I want to learn about the private side of banking, what they often means is, how do I stop being a consumer and start operating as the creditor? Just to reinforce that. Okay. Then the other question, the person will say, well, how do I become the bank? And the thing is, I've been answering it this whole time. The idea behind starting your own bank, and I may do a separate video on this specifically, okay, is everything that we talk about: creating the trust, structuring it properly, communicating with the debt collector, using negotiable instruments, moving in commerce. That right there is you. It's not that you're creating a bank, private bank. It's more of like you maneuvering with the banks privately, okay? Another thing I want to point out is why they don't really want you to know this, okay? The power, it's too powerful, okay? Because the power lies in the knowledge. It doesn't necessarily lie in the money. You know what I mean? Remember, damn, if I had my notes from today. People think that wealth or money is created by like doing a particular task or whatever the case may be. But it's more about when you have the value, you exchange it for, you know, whatever the values you need, and you serve people and you help people. What happens in that is the wealth is more of fulfillment. The wealth is more of taking care of your priorities, sharing and helping people. Okay. And, you know, structuring your lifestyle how you want it. Okay. Wealth doesn't inherently just start with money. Okay. Now, I want to break down how to move privately. Okay. So make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you right now. Okay. Because I can make a million videos saying the same thing, and I may get another question that may just literally lead us back to the same thing. So pay attention. If you're watching this video, pay attention to this part right here. When you are moving privately, number one, you're doing things like when you send a conditional acceptance letter, you're moving like a private bank. When you issue a promissory note, when you create a private trust and communicate with your trust, when you reserve your rights under the UCC using UCC 1-308, you're moving like a private bank. When you use things like a Form 56 to notify your fiduciary status, or to create, or you do a UCC1 to, well, I'll say UCC1 is also something public, but if you claim ownership over something that is going into something private, then in essence, you are putting out there that whatever you did in that UCC1 is now private. And when you do things like debt validation, demand accounting, you know, notice I'm demanding validation. I'm not asking. You get what I'm saying? That's the difference. When you use the UCC, you're demanding. When you're protecting your rights, it's not that you are asking if you can protect your rights. It's already protected. You are just asserting that. You are asserting your strength. You are moving privately as a banker, as a sovereign citizen, whatever the case may be. And again, you could do all this paperwork private. Oh, I corrected my status. I did the UCC1. I did my passport. I got the certificate of live birth. I did all these things. But you don't do conditional acceptance. You don't send them affidavits of truth. You don't communicate privately with the bank. But you think that as soon as you become private, you will have a private bank. You'll have this millions of dollars from your birth certificate. And you will also be, you know, pretty much like not liable for any more debts. If you wanted to be in that position, just go bankrupt and then stop getting credit. You get what I'm saying? It's actually easier than you think to be private. But if you want to be private but still operate in the public, this is what you got to do. You got to understand the administrative process. You got to understand how to communicate with debt collectors privately. You got to fully capture and the fully, you know, have the knowledge to where you know what it is that you're doing is something that you are supposed to do. When you are in a position where you are questioning why they are trying to take things public, when you decide when something goes public, that's when you are moving privately. But when they decide it, like when they have you default and then they put you on public notice that you got to show up to court, yeah, they just brought your private affairs public. So now everybody knows that you have a problem with them. But if you initiate it, then it's different. Okay. Everything that's happening behind the scenes, even with mortgage-backed securities and, how they make money behind the scenes, how the Federal Reserve is, operating, that is all private. I mean, yes, it's in Modern Money Mechanics, they tell you how it's done and what is done, just like I'm telling you how it's done. But when they do it, it's not like they're telling the world what's happening. That's private banking, or that's moving into private. Yes, you can put together a paperwork. You can do all this X, Y, and Z, be a secure party creditor. But if you don't know how to communicate privately and keep your matters private and get private remedy, yes, you're going to be in a position of where you're still moving into public. Whether you do all these forms and documentation, create a trust, if you don't know how to communicate with your trust and then still assert your status and challenge their jurisdiction, then you're not moving privately. Okay? Now, the private side of banking is not a myth. Okay? It's not even something mystical. Okay? It is how you move behind the scenes as it pertains to your affairs. Okay? As it pertains to your debts or obligations. The only way you can move privately with confidence is if you know the knowledge and information. If you stay tapped into the community. Okay? If you're constantly in the environment. Because the people that watch my videos or claim they watch my videos all the time still will ask a question like this, and that's okay. Because in my videos, I don't really explain what I am talking about as private banking. I explain it as debt discharge, but I need to start saying private banking, that this is private banking. This is actually a really good question that they put in my broadcast channel. If you want to be able to get in that broadcast channel, tap into the link in the description under Instagram, biz.nick. Also tap into with me on Twitch so you can be able to ask questions and answers. But if you want to learn more about this deeper, I'm going to put together a private side starter pack that's going to be included in the school community. The school community is less than $1 a day. You can tap into the school community, gather all my courses on debt, consumer law, how to overcome credit bureaus, how to sue them, but then also at the same time be tapped into the community where I communicate, I can see questions, I can be able to get private DMs, and this is outside of the social media. You can be able to bypass the 300,000 followers on Instagram. You can be able to bypass the 36K on YouTube. You can be able to bypass waiting until I go live. You can join the school community, ask your questions, and I'll typically respond. I'll get a notification. Okay? Tap into the school community if you truly want to learn about the private side and use it to your benefit. Number 2, if you want to work with me one-on-one, okay, and this is going to be outside of the community, go ahead and tap into that one-on-one mentorship application link down below. You'll talk to me or my team, and we're going to figure out what your situation is and see if we can help you. We focus on credit. We help people get funded who is in the 720s or better, 680 or better minimum. And also at the same time, I personally help people who are looking to create an offer online and make money online and how to grow and monetize that. Okay. So tap into that. Number 2 or number 3, comment below if you've ever wondered what private banking really meant, or if you've unknowingly already used it. Tap in and drop a question or even some more knowledge. If there is something I do not know, put it in the comment section down below. I'll do my own due diligence and make a part 2 to this video. If we get this video to, let's just say 300 likes, I'll make a part 2 to this video. Matter of fact, 500 likes, I'll make a part 2 to this video, and I'll dive in a little bit more about private banking. I'll even talk about the elements that we think, offshore accounts and all that. I'll even talk about that too. I've already did a video on treasury accounts and TDA. Tap into that. That will be in the playlist that's going to be shown at the end. Yeah. And that's what I have for you guys today. Now, remember to like, subscribe, turn on the post notifications so that you can get an update every time I post a video. Because we're talking about things that nobody is talking about, whether it's private banking, debt discharge, consumer law, whatever you want to see or whatever you understand. We talk about it here. The goal is to help a person become financially free and empower them to be their own boss and move privately. The first step to becoming private is becoming your own boss. Okay? So you don't have to answer to someone. And whether you do it through a business or whether you use credit or whether you use any of those private banking strategies that I talk about on this channel. But thank you guys for watching this video. If you got this far, remember to comment the word private and I'll see you in the next one.